You know, right now, in 2025, we are living through one of the biggest technological shifts in human history. But behind all the headlines about progress and efficiency, there's a really profound human story unfolding. And that's what we need to talk about. Take a look at this number, 100,000. That's how many tech jobs have been lost this year, just this year alone. It's a huge, staggering figure, and it's a direct result of what everyone's calling the AI realignment. But that's not just a statistic, right? Behind that number are 100,000 individual lives, careers, and families, all thrown into uncertainty almost overnight. And we're not talking about small, struggling startups here. No, this is happening at the very top. We're talking about the titans of the industry: Microsoft, Amazon, Google, even huge companies like Accenture and Nestle. These are the household names that basically run our digital lives, and they are all fundamentally reshaping their workforces around artificial intelligence. So all the headlines are celebrating this incredible new efficiency, this amazing innovation. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the hidden cost of all this progress? That's the real question we're going to dig into today. All right, so let's start by decoding some of the language that's being thrown around. The corporate world has its jargon, right? They call it restructuring for innovation or adapting for great experiences. But what do those nice-sounding phrases actually mean for the real people on the receiving end? Well, here's the thing. There's a huge gap between the corporate framing and the human reality. Streamlining operations actually just means a severance letter suddenly lands in your inbox. Adapting for innovation translates into a deep personal crisis of self-worth. For tens of thousands of people, this isn't about some cool new technology. It's about having to completely realign their sense of who they are. So let's talk about that human toll. What is the direct, personal impact of all this? Because for so many of these highly skilled professionals, a job was never just a paycheck. It was their identity, their community, a huge part of their life. This one quote just cuts right to the heart of it. What am I for now? That's the question that's echoing in the minds of people who spent decades building expertise that, almost overnight, feels obsolete. These are people who did everything right to be future-proof, only to wake up and find out the future had completely different plans. And this kind of psychological stress, it doesn't just stay in your head. It has very real physical consequences. The data is showing huge increases in everything from insomnia and elevated blood pressure to chronic headaches and digestive problems. It's like the body's emergency alarm is just stuck in the on position. And what's really interesting is that it's not just affecting the people who are let go. The survivors, the ones still in their jobs, are dealing with crushing anxiety and burnout, constantly trying to prove their value in this new, uncertain world. But here's where the story takes another turn, and it gets even more complicated. This widespread human trauma is having another, much more subtle consequence. It's actually poisoning the very data that we're using to train these new AI systems. It's creating a distorted reflection of ourselves that could have really damaging long-term effects. Okay, so check this out. It's a dangerous cycle. First, you have a massive disruption, like a layoff, which causes a lot of completely understandable situational distress. Second, that distress gets recorded as a data point. Maybe it's a new prescription for anxiety medication, but the crucial context of why is completely lost. Third, an AI model sifts through mountains of data and learns to connect that medical code and a gap in employment with being a high-risk individual. And finally, that now biased system starts reinforcing inequality, maybe by automatically screening that person out of a job application or charging them more for insurance. And that brings us to this core idea. AI acts as both a mirror and a multiplier. It reflects the biases that are already present in our society, but then it amplifies them at an incredible scale. It takes a temporary situational trauma and embeds it into the data as if it's a permanent personal flaw. The system doesn't learn that unemployment was a circumstance, it learns that it's a character trait. So what do we do about this? The answer is responsible design. And that means a lot more than just writing better code. It means we need real human oversight. It means tech companies need to work with mental health experts. It means building ethical safeguards to start repairing the trust between people and the automated systems that are shaping more and more of our lives. Now, as unsettling as all of this is, and it is unsettling, it's really important to zoom out and remember, we have been here before. This feeling of intense anxiety and disruption, it's actually part of a very familiar historical pattern that, believe it or not, almost always leads to renewal. Just look at this timeline.
The Great Depression, the rise of automation in the 70s, the digital revolution in the 90s, the 2008 financial crisis, the pandemic shift, each one was a massive shock to the system. The AI realignment is just the latest chapter. Now, what makes this one different is the unbelievable speed of the change. But what history shows us again and again is that these periods of chaos are followed by incredible innovation and a new kind of normal.
And that brings us to the most hopeful and, I think, the most important part of this entire story: the massive opportunity that's hidden inside this crisis. Because what might look like a workforce in retreat is actually a workforce in metamorphosis. I want you to think about this term, liberated human capital. This isn't just a fancy way of saying unemployed. This is about a vast reservoir of talent, of technical skill, of institutional knowledge, and creative energy that has just been freed from the constraints of traditional corporate structures. These are the very people who are now free to build whatever comes next. And this isn't some theoretical, far-off future. It is already happening. We're seeing displaced program managers becoming the very first AI governance experts. Data scientists are starting their own firms to audit algorithms for bias. Designers who felt the strain firsthand are now building mental health tools for other people in transition. These are the seeds of a new, more conscientious economy, and they're being planted as we speak. You know, for so long, the story of technology has been about what machines can replace. But maybe, just maybe, this era will be defined by what we as humans choose to reclaim: our purpose, our creativity, and our ability to care for one another. So the question I want to leave you with is this: when we all look back on the great AI realignment of 2025, what will we see? Will we remember it for the jobs it ended, or for the purpose it helped us reclaim? A time of loss, or a time of renewal? The choice, ultimately, is up to us. Thanks for joining me.